So, on behalf of the Seattle Sephardic Unity Project Committee, I'd like to welcome you all to this evening's program. The idea tonight, of course, is to report on the committee's progress, to define next steps, but the idea of pairing the evening with a Sephardic dessert and wine reception was very intentional. We thought, what better way to demonstrate how great it feels to be together than to have a kind of nochada and enjoy each other's company and some great food. So really pleased that all of you came out, and hope you had a good time. And I think you'll enjoy the evening. I'd like to share just a little background before we get started. The subcommittee, as we call it, in its current form, has been active since November of 2017. But the recent history of this century-old dance between the Seattle Sephardic congregations really started in the fall of 2014 with discussions between synagogue presidents Simon Amiel, Joe Aguado, Steve Hemet, and me, and Rabbis Hassan and Myers. The idea at that time, as had been done in the past, was to consider the possibilities for an enhanced relationship between our sister congregations, a spectrum of possibilities from a significantly increased alliance to unification. At this particular juncture in our history, would an alliance between the congregations better position the Seattle Sephardic community for success in the future? Would it help ensure the viability and vibrancy of our community for our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren? With a certain humility born of our collective awareness of community history, we started with the premise that we should really not presume to know the answer to those questions. We should rather reach out and feel the pulse of the community. The boards of both congregations authorized a preliminary inquiry in early 2015. A committee was formed for that purpose. We hired a consultant in 2016. By the end of the year, she had conducted 20 interviews with a select representative sample of 10 SBH members and 10 Ezra Sereth members, East Side Seattle, observant, non-observant, women, men, Sephardi, Ashkenazi. Upon completion, our consultant summarized results indicating that although feedback was mixed, the dominant sentiment amongst the interviewees was support for the idea of a unified Sephardic community in some form. The early committee was comprised of consultant Shirley Bishop, Simon Amiel, me, Jeff Merriman Cohen, Miriam Farhi, Jay Aguado, who I saw here tonight, Jordan Asulin, Leah Scappa, Rena Benolio, and Barbara Melber. Based on the results of that initial inquiry, in November of 2017, the general memberships of both congregations charged a new, expanded committee with 1, expansion of the inquiry to a community-wide conversation, and 2, formulation of a model, a memorandum of understanding outlining a vision and structure for a unified Sephardic community in Seattle for consideration by the synagogue memberships. Through town hall, parlor, and general meetings and an online survey, we explored people's visions, hopes, dreams for the future of our Sephardic community. We documented and heard concerns about the current state of Sephardic life in Seattle, and considered how those concerns might inform an alliance or consolidation of the two congregations. We're here tonight because the subcommittee is close to completing those tasks that we were assigned by the general memberships of our congregations. The model that will form the basis of a memorandum of understanding will be presented to you tonight by Simon Amiel and Norman Bihar, part of our program. We hope you'll find that and the other presentations that have been prepared for you tonight, meaningful, informative, and enjoyable. One final item. I feel it's important to note that as we've been navigating this process and community conversation over the last couple of years, some guiding principles have emerged as being paramount. One, throughout this process and after the process is completed, regardless of the outcome, we must treat each other with love and respect. Unity is the operative term in our project and committee title. If we all sincerely want what is best for the Seattle Sephardic community, whatever path we ultimately take, we will navigate it together. And God willing, si quiere el Dios, we'll find success together. Two, unification must include identifiable improvements to what we're doing currently. Harnessing the resources and talent of both memberships must result in a new entity that is greater than the sum of its parts, a new entity that offers more and meets the needs of more of our people. Three, differences and nuances in custom and liturgy between the two congregations have too often been seen as a source of conflict when they should really be viewed as enriching our common tradition. We should never allow those beautiful differences to be a source of conflict. In fact, we must proactively seek them out, document them, and perpetuate them. We're possibly the most culturally knowledgeable and authentic Ladino-speaking community in the world. We have a responsibility to perpetuate our centuries-old multifaceted Sephardic tradition and promote it as a rich and integral part of our larger Jewish tradition, which it truly is. Finally, we must maintain the classic Sephardic balance between tradition and tolerance. We must embrace the characteristics of moderation and acceptance against the dominant modern trend towards sectarianism. Ours must be a big tent that offers a place and a meaningful experience for Jews of all backgrounds. Everyone should be welcomed and enriched socially, spiritually, in the unified Seattle Sephardic community that we are envisioning. Before I introduce Simon and Norman, I'd like to just point out that we will have time after the presentation for some questions and answers. As we suggested in the letter that we sent out, the questions and answers should be limited to process and the presentation tonight. This is not the time to debate the merits of what we're presenting, what we've been tasked to present. That opportunity will arrive when we're actually in the synagogue setting, each synagogue providing opportunity to discuss the merits and make a decision, which is where we're headed, as you'll see. With all that said, it's my pleasure and privilege to call on Simon and Norman to commence tonight's presentation.
Hello.
Simon.
Norman.
Okay.
How's it going?
That's going great.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Wonderful attendance tonight. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have a wonderful presentation for you that will take you through it. And hopefully it'll be clear and you'll be able to understand where the committee's coming from. So let's get started. So first, let's do a little bit of an introduction.
So I'm Norman Bihar, and I'm the grandson of Reverend David J. Bihar, who served Ezra B'Sereth for over 50 years.
And I'm Simon Amiel. I'm the grandson of Reverend Samuel Ben Arroyo, who served Sephardic Bikor Cholim for many years. I'm not sure, probably not 50, but many. So let's begin at the beginning. What's driving this project? So the question is, and the statement is, 1 + 1 = 3. The premise is that we believe that if we're able to consolidate, that we can be more than the sum of our parts. And that's driving everything. The question that we're seeking to answer and that we believe the answer to is yes. Additionally, when we look at the practical side, the other things that are driving this project is that when we look around, we see declining facilities with too many seats that are not filled. We see a duplication in terms of our facilities, in terms of our prayer services, in terms of our staffing, and in terms of our programming. Speaking of programming, you may have noticed just last month we had not one, not two, but 3 Fruticas programs, which of course begs the question, how much Fruticas is too much Fruticas? We have an aging membership whom we love, but they have a diminished family membership legacy, which means there isn't necessarily next person up. And we'll show you some of the data that we found about that as well. As far as we know, there have been no new members from Tequirdad or Rodez in quite some time. There are models and precedents for success both in Sephardic Adventure Camp and the Seattle Sephardic Brotherhood, as well as many events that we've done together in cooperation. And we've seen increased competition for new members in the last few decades. In Seward Park, as an example, there are 5 congregations. There are no dues models like Chabad, and other congregations in our area provide lower barrier points of entry that are easier for families, especially families for whom prayer may not be their first point of access to a Jewish or Sephardic experience.
Simon, thank you. So we'll get to background and findings. So the quest for Sephardic unity is not new in any way. It's been going on for almost 100 years. I'll take you back to 1927. There was, sponsored out of the Sephardic Bikur Halim, the Ben Ezra Kasten Initiative of 1927. And what I found fascinating is that in 1927, the 2 congregations held joint high holiday services. So we often hear today about differences in our minhagim, but if you think back in 1927, both congregations were probably pretty tied to their minhagim back then, and they ran joint services. And it inspired a meeting much like tonight's meeting. There's a history book of Ezra B'Sereth that was produced a few years ago. Rabbi Myers, I think, went into the archives of the University of Washington. And this letter's been translated, but it was a letter signed by the then president of the Ezra B'Sereth, Nisim Piha, and by my grandfather, who was the secretary. And basically, the congregations prayed together, and it reads, "Seeing that the presence of all the brothers in the synagogue during the prayers of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur caused a great joy, extraordinary to all the members, invitation to everyone, either a member or a non-member, to be present at this meeting." So there's certainly been initiatives going back to 1927. There were other initiatives that have happened. And those initiatives, for whatever reason, didn't move forward. And it actually seems like both congregations kind of blamed the other congregation for it not moving forward. But this time we kind of took a different approach. There weren't separate initiatives, but we began together, officially sanctioned by the congregations. So just in terms of acknowledging, there's been a lot of great work done, and we'll get into kind of what the work is and the findings. But here's a list of volunteers that have worked so hard to bring us to where we are tonight. We think there's really balanced representation between both congregations, men and women, 98118, outside of Seward Park members. And so a lot of great work happened in the committee. I also just want to acknowledge separately Eitan Bassari, who would have been here with us tonight, and we'll get to that a little bit later, leading a panel discussion, but he was instrumental in helping develop tonight's presentation.
Norm, how about if we give these volunteers a round of applause? I think they deserve it. Yeah.
So let's just talk a little bit about process, then we'll get into some of the data. I'll turn it back to Simon. So we met on over a dozen occasions. I don't have the exact number, but we met almost monthly. We discussed process findings, and we developed recommendations. We'll share those with you this evening. We had subcommittees, and we looked at facilities, demographics, financials, governments, data collection and analysis. We hosted town hall and parlor meetings, so we had a number of people, over 250 participants. And we had a survey that went out with over 500 respondents. So we think we've done a lot in terms of data collection and just really trying to understand the pulse of the community. So on the communal input side, we had the town hall meetings, the parlor meetings, we had the online survey. And on the data analysis, we had membership demographics, income and expenses, staffing, and facilities. So let me turn it back over to Simon, and we'll get to our findings. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so let's go over some of the things that we've learned from you. So between the two congregations, there are 480 member family units, right? Varying in number, obviously. 70% of our combined members are over the age of 60, and 26% are over the age of 80. Again, we love them. Now, this is what, when we refer to diminished legacy membership, this is what we were referring to. Of the 250 members who responded to the survey, right, which is a pretty decent sample size, of those that have children, only 60% of their children are members or part of member families. And of those that have grandchildren, only 30% of them are members or parts of member families. So the echo of membership is diminishing generation to generation. And we don't know, we can't predict who will become a member, who will move back, why they're not members necessarily. 63% of our combined members live outside of the Seward Park neighborhood. Together, we have about $1 million in annual income, about $1 million in annual expenses, so hooray for balanced budgets. We have a combined endowment of about $1 million. We have very, very similar historic expense structures, and we have a very, very similar historic approach to staffing. In terms of our facility, both congregations have a sanctuary, a social hall, a kitchen. Ezra B'Sereth, as you know, owns a single family home that historically has housed the rabbi and his family. Ezra B'Sereth has about 90,000 square feet, SBH about 79,000 square feet. The estimated land value is about the same, plus Ezra B'Sereth has the single family home, which is estimated at about $800,000. There are about 1,200 seats between both congregations, with, on a typical Shabbat, we probably use about 20% of those. And don't hold us to these numbers, but if we're looking at some basic renovations, at EB, about $1.6 million in some major repairs and renovation, and over $3 million for SBH, including raising and building a new social hall. So there's some pretty significant work that needs to be done, in our opinion, to both congregations. In terms of what we learned, what we value most, what you value most about being Sephardic and living a Sephardic life, this is the percentage of respondents who felt that these things were highly important or important. Number one, far and away, was our openness to different levels of observance. We all come from different places, and we're very accepting in that way. Number two, our unique Sephardic customs are special to us. Number three, not surprising, our Sephardic food. And number four, our unique Sephardic history. So things that are unique to us, are special to us, and there's a whole list, but these are the top four. We also learned about our opportunities for improvement and growth. This is the percentage of respondents who feel very satisfied or satisfied with some of the things that we have to offer. One thing that I'll let you know about this scale is that in terms of opportunity, 58% was actually the highest level of satisfaction of anything that we listed. So the highest level with prayer services and bar mitzvah practices was at 58%, which if you look on the bright side, that's a tremendous opportunity for identification of growth and improvement, and we now know where we can actually drill down and work. 58% prayer services and bar mitzvah practices, 44% satisfied with bat mitzvah practices, 38% with adult education and engagement of women and girls in Jewish life, and 31% with youth programs and adult programs. When we gave a list of 23 different priorities to choose from in terms of what you would prioritize in a consolidated congregation. Our top four, again, given our propensity and love for our food, number one is a beautiful social and catering hall. Number 2 is to engage women and girls in meaningful Jewish experiences. Number 3 is a robust youth program. And number 4 is a learning kitchen. So, right, 2 out of 4 about food, but that's okay. And our lowest priority is a Sephardic mikveh, a separate services for SBH and EB traditions some of the time, a Sephardic kollel, and then separate services for SBH and EB traditions at all times.
Okay, Simon, thank you. So as you can see, we gathered a lot of data, we gathered a lot of information from the survey, and at least we're able to kind of prioritize what was most important and some of the things that clearly there's a lot of room for improvement. So we're going to have a quick panel discussion. I'm going to ask Simon to moderate the panel. Eitan was originally scheduled for tonight, but he's not feeling so well. So I'm going to ask our panelists, Emily, Daniel, Yael, and Miri Azos-Tilson, to come forward, and I'll turn it over to Simon to lead that panel.
Great, thank you. So we're really blessed to have 4 of our younger members with us. I'm going to quickly read their bios, and then we'll move into some questions here. First, we have Emily Al-Hadaf. Emily is a member of Ezra B'Sereth and the editor of Jewish in Seattle magazine. She's the mom of 3 gorgeous young children. She didn't write gorgeous. I just happen to know they're gorgeous. She serves as a Daisy Girl Scout troop leader for the Seattle Hebrew Academy K-1 Girls, and was recently appointed to the board of the Anti-Defamation League for the Pacific Northwest. Daniel Gur moved to Seattle 5 years ago from Johannesburg, where he was born and raised. He became a SBH member 2 years ago and has enjoyed being part of such a wonderful Sephardic community. Miri Azos-Tilson is a Seattle native and 4th-generation member of SBH. After living outside of Seattle for 14 years, Miri and her Ashkenazic husband, Benjay, this is what she wrote, moved to Seattle 2.5 years ago with their boys Dory and Eliyahu. The self-proclaimed ambassador of unity, works full-time as a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley, and outside of caring for her family, she devotes her time to community service. And then lastly, Yael Chotzen. Yael is a member of Ezra B'Sereth and a local realtor. She is a Seattle native who attended SHA Northwest Yeshiva High School and graduated with a business degree from UW. She's a new mom to a beautiful, beautiful baby, Poo 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 Eliel. And Yael, along with her husband Jared, looks forward to helping to strengthen the Seattle Jewish community for generations to come. So let's welcome our panelists. So we've got a few questions, and thank you again, panelists, for being with us. Are we feeling okay and relaxed? Okay, good. So here's the first question. Do we have 2 mics? Let's grab the other mic too. Thank you, Norman. So let's start with this one. What are you and your family's must-have needs for the future when you think about Jewish life and Sephardic life?
Sure. I'm happy to start. First, I just want to say, as part of the committee, how touched I am to see such a full room. We've really spent many evenings working on this committee together. It's a labor of love, and I think it's an affirmation of all the work that we've done, so thank you. What's important to me, and specifically in Sephardic life, is really continuing my family's legacy, for my kids to know, where they came from and all of our beautiful traditions. And I am concerned that we may lose the opportunity to do that if we don't have a strong, thriving Sephardic synagogue in Seattle.
Great.
I would just echo that. I think the most important thing is my kids, and that we have a vibrant Sephardic culture here. It's a very special culture, and that's preserved. And also that that when people come back, that they want to come back to Seattle, and that there is a place for our kids to come back to that is exciting for them and has opportunities for them. And in the short term, a vibrant youth program is very simple, and my feelings echo the slides very much. That we have something that my kids are young and they look forward to coming to synagogue. A lot of that has to do with candy, also friends, but I really want them to love this tradition, and I think that is probably the bottom line for me.
So I had the opportunity to live in Los Angeles for about 10 years of my life, and it's a great opportunity because LA is a real thriving and vibrant Jewish community. And although we're not LA, I think there's a lot we can adopt from the LA vibrancy. And I think we can really envision creating a Sephardic center for Jewish life for the greater Seattle community and the East Side. And I think we can really be a center. And this center can have a variety of facets. And I just wanted to suggest one facet that we can focus on that's important to me. And that is Israel, to have an Israel focus. And I really feel like we can create events, culturally Jewish events that are around Israel, like, for example, an Israeli Independence Day festival and other fun Israel activities. We can have Israeli professors from the Technion and other universities, and we can have speakers that are from Israeli startups. So there's really a lot that we can focus on with Israel, and we can really be a center for pro-Israel advocacy as well. And I think we can combine that with co-hosting events with other pro-Israel advocacy groups like AIPAC and Stand With Us. And just as an example, we have synagogues like Herzl and Temple de Hirsch that send very large delegations to support the pro-Israel alliance between America and Israel, and strong pro-Israel advocacy. And why can't we do that? Why can't we send a huge Sephardic delegation to AIPAC to represent our Sephardic community on behalf of Israel? So I think there's a lot we can do, and we can take a little bit of that LA vibrancy and feel and bring it to Seattle.
Cool. Yeah, I guess out of the whole panel, I'm probably the only one that picked the Sephardic community. I had the option to pick the Sephardic community, and I'm really grateful to be part of it. The things I love most is the warmth of the community. It feels very much like I'm at home in South Africa. Everyone's very much, it's the traditional feel. So, no one gets judged for driving to shul on Shabbat, and just everyone in the community has made Ruth and myself feel very, very welcome, and we really love it here.
Great. So I'm going to go off script a little bit. Sorry, guys. So the four of you have a pretty good familiarity with the synagogue building itself, right? With maybe even Shabbat or holidays itself. How important is it that this, if we are to successfully do this, that we create relevant and engaging opportunities for families who Shabbat is not their number one priority, or ritual is not their necessarily, in this setting, their number one priority?
I'm holding the mic, so
Go for it.
So how do we create opportunities is the question?
Sure, or how is it important to you?
Of course, it's important. I think the data is showing us that 63% of our members are not in our area, which probably means that I don't want to make assumptions, but the people who generally live near the synagogues feels important to be able to walk there on Shabbat. So there are, I would just like to actually echo what Yael was saying about creating a cultural center, and I feel very strongly about this, that I want a cafe. That's just what I want. I would love to see that. I would love to see if let me just backtrack. I want to be very clear that I just want a sustainable future for our synagogues. If it means that we don't create a unity approach, I just want each one to move in a sustainable direction. And a lot needs to happen for that to happen. If this were to result in a unified front, I think that this is a great opportunity for for an actual vibrant cultural center that could. We already are on the map as a Sephardic cultural center. We are very unique. Our history. We're not like the other Sephardic communities around the country. We're not Syrian. We're not Persian. It's a very unique culture. We've already arrived on the map in a lot of areas, especially academically. This is a great place, a great chance for us to become a center for culture, for arts. I'd love to see maybe a museum, maybe just rotating exhibits. I'd love to see a cafe. Let me just say that again. Maybe there has been talk about more educational programs for kids. I don't know if a religious school is a viable idea, but a religious school. So yes, I mean, like, I'll just also say that what's interesting is that when we look kind of back at our history, this has been a very kind of religious-oriented experience. Brother, come join us at our holiday services. I guess 100 years ago, but I think that we've carried a lot of that attitude with us still, and we have a lot more opportunity. And now is the time to sort of break through some of those, I wouldn't call them barriers, but very comfortable positions that we're in, and say this is a great time for us to be opening our minds and really coming up with lots of ideas, coming up with creative solutions for bringing in so many of our families who are out there who are really probably very much in need and desiring Sephardic content and community.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would love to see a lot more Kirov in Seattle. Honestly, I was brought into the community by a Kollel rabbi that's no longer in Seattle. He left. There's better opportunities for him elsewhere. And there's been like an influx of people like me, coming in for jobs at Amazon or Microsoft, and they're like not fully in touch. They're not like religious, but we can slowly like draw them in by just showing them how beautiful our culture is. And I really would love to see more Kirov happening in Seattle. And this is a great opportunity for us.
Great. So, along the lines of what Emily was saying, why is it important that we're doing this now, in your opinions?
I guess I'll go first this time. I think that now is a great time because it's our choice. And I think it's always better to have the opportunity to make a change consciously rather than being forced to make a change. I think we're also at a point in Seattle history with the growth of Amazon and Microsoft that there are so many Jews here. There are so many Jews moving here. And I think to counteract the declining membership in our synagogue, it's important to create something that is more engaging, going back to what Daniel said, that serves Jewish needs in different ways other than, my dad's needs. No offense. Because I know his synagogue needs are very well met.
Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, right now we have so much ruach and passion around our Sephardic community, which is great. I think we should just capitalize on it. And I think outreach is really the name of the game. Everyone's sort of touched on it, but Seattle is one of the largest growing cities in the country. We have so many people moving to our town, and it's a great opportunity to reach out to people and bring them into the community. And whether they're religious, not religious, Sephardic, doesn't matter, as long as they like our food. Yeah, I think outreach is very important.
Good.
There was something that a speaker said a couple of years ago when, I won't mention who it was, but he gave a lecture at Ezra B'Zereth, and he said this great thing that I always remembered. He said, "Come for the Berekas, stay for the revolution."
Got it. Okay. So last question that I'll pose to you. So I'm out of leading questions for you guys, so I'll have to just use this one. But the original question is what has made you choose the Sephardic community in Seattle? And I know, Daniel, you touched on this a little bit. I think maybe I'll try to ask this a little bit differently without trying to put you all too much on the spot. But what's important about being Sephardic? I mean, why not sort of just be Jewish? What's important about being Sephardic?
I think in the presentation it was touched on, but For me, I think Sephardic is sort of non-denominational. You could drive to synagogue on Shabbat and be totally welcome, and that's actually one thing that sort of kept us coming to Ezzy is just the warmth and openness of the members in the community. And I know this is true for SBH as well. There's just a lot of warmth and openness, and I think we can continue that. For myself also, I think my parents have been longtime members of EB, and although I've gone away and come back, I think might be a little bit of Jewish daughter guilt to come to synagogue every Shabbat, but no, seriously, it's nice for my daughter to have that tradition of kind of coming to Shabbat services, Sephardic services that are traditional and very moving, and have that tradition of experience with her grandparents. Yeah. So that'd be special.
Yeah. And I believe tonight you shared with me there was a Sephardic milestone for your daughter. She had her
first bizcocho.
That's right. Very big.
And she loved it.
Very, very big. Right. Right.
So for me, we really try to raise our boys 50-50, to be fair. And a big reason that we moved to Seattle was because they felt so comfortable at SBH. It was like their second home, even though we would really visit, just on holidays and family visits. And so they don't know who they're related to. They think everyone is their cousin, and they mostly are. But that was a big draw for us, that even though we lived in LA for 8 years and they were born there, and we were very active community members there as well, they felt a sense of warmth and belonging at SBH that they didn't feel anywhere else.
Yeah, again, I just love the warmth of the community. I bounced around from all the shuls in Stewart Park, and just the Sephardic community as a whole. I just felt like really I was with my family in South Africa, and just it's a really good place.
Yeah. It also helps that you look Sephardic, Daniel. I got to be honest.
No, I'm Sephardic.
Yeah.
Right.
I have imposter syndrome because I am not Sephardic. But I'll just say that coming from an East Coast Ashkenazi family, really not knowing anything about Sephardic life until I married my husband Ty, and we moved here, and I had no idea what this community was like and how many El Hadafs I was related to. I still don't know them, most of them. So but I quickly adopted this community, and I think it's really great. And and just to echo with everything that everyone's already said, but also to add that there's a Sephardic attitude to life and to Judaism that's really refreshing, and I think that's something that we could kind of be the light into the nations about. There's a positivity. Rabbi Mark Angel talks a lot about this, and I've always really liked that. It's not all gloom and doom. We have a lot of positive thoughts and tunes, and there's just a lot of, and there's also a lot of, there's a porous border between our world and the world outside, and there isn't so much fear about those borders crossing. And so I really like that, as well as the kind of the warmth and openness and the openness to different observance levels. That's very important. Are you going to ask any more questions, Simon?
No, I think we're going to wrap up.
I just wanted to, there was something else that when I think it was supposed to go in the what's the kind of bottom line for you.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put this in that answer, but
go for it.
Something that I thought a lot about and I prepared something about was one of the slides having to do with women and girls engagement, and that's kind of been one of my rallying cries. And I just want to say that that's very important. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's the be-all, end-all, and that's the make or break point for us, but I want to just say that when we talk about women's engagement, we never really talk about men's engagement, just like, your dad's needs are always met. When we talk about women's engagement, we're talking about women as a subset of the community and sometimes as a special interest group. That's something that I would really like to see change. One thing that I love about the Sephardic community and the outlook to life is that it hasn't been divided by denominations and different opinions and broken down in the same way that other communities have. But one thing about tradition, despite its beauty, is that sometimes it's hard to change it. And there are many areas where I think if we thought creatively, we could start to, I think that we're being more rigid in some areas than is necessary. And I think that there are some areas where we can think more creatively. And so when we talk about women and girls engagement, I really want to think about this in a real term of inclusivity. It's 2019 now. And I think that this matters to a lot of people, and I think a lot of women are not saying it. So that's where I'll leave my, maybe you want to end on a more positive note, but I'll just leave it at that.
That's a great opportunity and a great way to, yeah, thank you.
I just do want to add one more thing.
Sure.
Is going back to the idea of unity. You know, Jewish people always come together during life cycle events for good and for bad. And I think that looking around the room and seeing so many, you know, familiar faces, and always when we attend EB or there's a simcha, you know, we all come together. And why do we have to wait for something to happen? It should be our choice. And personally, I think the more the merrier, and it's a big party. Sephardic party.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's give a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you guys very, very much. Appreciate that.
So Daniel, thank you very much. Yael, Mary, Yael, thank you all for participating in the panel. Emily, and Simon, thank you for pinch hitting and moderating that panel. So we're going to now get into, oh, wait for everyone. Thank you again. We're going to now get into some of the model assumptions and what our recommendations are. So we've shared with you a little bit about the process, we've shared with you a little bit about the findings, and now we want to get into recommendations. But one of the things that we spent a tremendous amount of time on is facilities. It turns out that our members, both congregations, at least a substantial number, are very tied to their facilities. So we spent a lot of time thinking about facilities. How do we do this where everyone wins? There's really no loser, everybody could come out ahead. And we didn't really have a great answer to that. And so I think we chewed up a lot of meetings trying to address that issue. And then one of our constituents, and I won't say a name, but from outside the committee, sent us a little video. And this video really changed the way we were thinking about things. And I won't say that the video is 100% applicable, but I think it's really thought-provoking. So let me just use a video as an introduction. It's by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who I think many people here know, very well respected international rabbi. And we'll start the video. And it's called The Home We Build Together. So hopefully our AV will work. Playing.
Let's try it this way.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Thanks.
Come on. Yeah. Okay, everybody's an IT expert all of a sudden. It seems to be running, but...
Maybe back a slide.
I wonder whether or not...
If we got out of show mode.
Oh, hold on, let's try this. Oh,
Jared, great.
let's see. I wonder if we do duplicate instead of extend. Where's the video? It's right there.
Brief intermission. But the video hopefully will start shortly. We are. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Jared.
How do you sustain a cohesive society in the midst of unprecedented religious and ethnic diversity? How, in an age of mass migration, do you integrate minorities without destroying their identity or losing yours? That's a key issue facing the West today. So let's look at how societies have dealt with it in the past and where they went wrong. The first was the way Britain and other European countries did it in the 19th century. I call it the country house model. Imagine 100 immigrants turn up in the English countryside at the gate of an enormous country house. The owner of the house, an aristocrat, greets the new arrivals with a warm and welcoming smile. "How good to see you," he says. "There are 100 of you. I have at least 100 spare rooms. Please come and stay for as long as you like." He couldn't be more hospitable. The only trouble is, he's the host, and you're just a guest. It's his home, not yours. So, in 19th century Europe, immigrants found refuge, but they were conscious of being outsiders, guests. That failed. Not in England, but in Germany, Austria, France, and other European countries who decided, one way or another, that they really didn't want the Jewish guests anymore. That's how the Holocaust happened with so little protest from the general population. In America, in the 19th and early 20th century, there was a different model. It was called the melting pot. Into the pot went all the immigrants, Irish, Italian, Jewish, and out came something different. They'd all become Americans. At least, that was the theory. What happened, in fact, was that they came out hyphenated Americans. Irish American, Italian American, Jewish American. Many of them, especially African Americans, but others also, were discriminated against. So rather than a single national identity, you had lots of jangling interest groups. The American motto was "E pluribus unum," out of the many, one. But it turned out that there was more pluribus than unum. So in the 1970s, Europe and America turned to a new model, the hotel. Imagine 100 immigrants turn up in a town. The leaders of the town say, "Welcome. Please come and stay in one of our hotels. That's where we all live. All you have to do is pay the bill, and you're free to do whatever you like in your room, so long as the noise doesn't disturb the other guests." This was the strategy known as multiculturalism. It was meant to cure the problems of the country house and the melting pot. Now everyone was free to keep their own identities, and they did so, natives and newcomers, on the same terms. All they had to do was pay the bill, taxes, and in return they each had their own room and the hotel services. The only trouble is that in a hotel, no one belongs. A hotel is not a home, which upset the people who'd been there a long time and thought they had a home. It was also disastrous for any sense of collective identity. Hotel guests don't constitute a community. The things that matter, they do in their private rooms. Multiculturalism was supposed to make everyone feel at home, but in the end it made no one feel at home. It was supposed to lead to integration. Instead, it led to segregation. So, for the 21st century, we need a new model. I call it the home we build together. 100 immigrants turn up in a town. The leaders of the town say, "Welcome. We're so sorry we don't have a country house or a hotel, but we do have some spare land and lots of building materials and some expert architects and electricians, so let's all build you a house together." The natives and newcomers work together, side by side. And in the course of building, the newcomers learn the ways of the natives, and the natives benefit from the skills of the newcomers. The newcomers keep many of their old customs, but they also bring their unique gifts as contributions to the town. And they feel they belong because, with the help of the natives, they have built their own homes, which merge architecturally with the other houses in the town. The model of society as the home we build together emphasizes responsibilities more than rights. It values differences because they're not used to keep us apart, but rather they mean we each have something different and special to give to the common good. The town grows because of all the new food and music and fashions the newcomers bring to the town square, and the natives still feel at home because the newcomers respect their way of doing things. That is integrated diversity. It's so much better than the country house, the melting pot, and the hotel, because building leads to belonging. When we build, we bond. Society is the home we build together.
Wow, so Simon, can you get us back to the presentation? Yep. Terrific. So I think one of the key themes that I would take away from that is, under the model that we're going to present right now, we do want everyone to feel included in the model. And we thought that there was enough relevancy from Rabbi Sachs' message that it really needs to be something that the two congregations build together that is bigger than each of the congregations themselves, back to Simon's original point of 1 + 1 = 3. So in terms of model assumptions, do you have the clicker?
Yeah.
Want to create a brand new entity. It will not be SBH, it will not be EB, it will be a brand new not-for-profit entity with a brand new name. One facility in Seward Park with satellite offerings. We want to make sure we can serve our collective community. Temporary facilities during construction. Minyanim within walking distance of both locations for the foreseeable future. We know people own homes. They need to be close to where they can walk to a minyan. A revenue model, and this is a key point, from the sale of assets plus a capital campaign to match. So it's not just a matter of raising the assets from the sale of property, but really building this together and putting our resources together to build something really spectacular. And building it together, we're going to give a rough timeline. Again, there will be architects involved, there will be other people involved, but we think it's about a 3 to 5 year period. So we would unite and do this together over a 3 to 5 year period. Let me drill down on these. So in terms of facilities, it would be a new home together, one main sanctuary. So get a little bit specific here. Again, it would be up to the congregations if they even approve this as to what we would actually do, but this is our vision based on the inputs we received. One main sanctuary that allows for greater engagement of all attendees. Midrash and multi-purpose space with mobile seating, so we can be very flexible. Social hall suitable for rental, capacity to create a secondary sanctuary, youth minyanim, learners minyan, number of different purposes. New catering and learning kitchens, so we know that we highly value our food. It came up twice, I think, in our top priorities. Dedicated youth wing, we heard from younger families. It really is about making sure we can offer something that's really attractive to youth, something that goes well beyond singing Adon Olam at the end of services, but something that can keep them engaged all the way through their teenage years and hopefully their college years as well. Office space for clergy, staff, and administration. And an outdoor plaza. We have a beautiful Rhodes Coast Memorial. We want to have outdoor kiddushim in the few months that Seattle will allow that to happen. Learning garden, sukkah, playground, sport court. Something that's really nice and very flexible and also youth-oriented. Going on with facilities, a large vestibule space for indoor kiddush, legacy and donor walls, historical displays, secured and ADA compliant facility. So one of the big issues I think we all agree on is this issue of security is going to get bigger and more expensive. So having a lot of small facilities spending $100,000 a year or more in security isn't feasible. ADA compliant. Office for partner organizations, so we may have some additional office space for, let's say, Sephardic Adventure Camp or the Seattle Sephardic Network if they wanted to be a part of this. Classroom space so we can have ongoing education. Long-term rental of campsite or retreat so we could do things off-site. We're not suggesting we'd build our own camp. We're just suggesting we would have a rental arrangement. Enhanced multimedia library, so we said the culture is very important. We'd want to have a Sephardic resource center. Again, we're not looking to duplicate what already exists in the community, but make sure we can have some things that are really true to our heritage that we value so much at EB and SBH. And Eastside Sephardic Center, probably a leased facility. We'd have some engagement staff that would go out there, but we'd have dedicated space for events, classes, East Shabbat dinners, services. Not everything has to happen in Seward Park. We really want to make this accessible to the community and go out and meet the community where they are. Professional staff. So this would happen in a couple of phases. First phase, not a lot different than where we are today. So we'd have a senior rabbi, a chazan. This is different, a director of youth engagement. We want youth to be an immediate priority, an office manager and custodial staff. So basically what it takes to operate a congregation plus a really strong, dedicated youth. Phase 2, we could see that expanding, getting kind of a engagement couple, a rabbinic couple that could do engagement type work. I think Daniel said it very well when he said, in terms of outreach, it really happens by inviting people and having people who are specialized and have skills in that area to go and get those young families and young people that are working at Microsoft and Amazon and get them coming to our hopefully new home that we build together. An executive director, director of programming and Sephardic education. So we're a little aspirational here, but given the collective resources and the wealth in our community, this is all very achievable. In terms of ritual, one primary minyan, we'd integrate specific customs and melodies of both Rodizli and Turkish traditions. I'm confident if they could do that in 1927, we can do that today. Multiple concurrent services, so we may want to have an early service, a learner service, East Side Youth, multiple flexibility, so we have other things going on. And we saw that there was huge areas for improvement in bar and bat mitzvah training, maybe a year-long type program they participate in, service projects, and actually start exploring text so that we would be able to engage both the young men and young women in a more meaningful way. Adult education and programs is huge. We have a lot of adults here. There was obviously a lot of interest in this program tonight. And we do want to have something that's a little bit more targeted than we have today. Today we kind of have one featured lecture. I'm not saying we wouldn't have that, but we want a variety of different programs. Understand that people connect to their Sephardic identity and their synagogues based on different things. Like if I look at Ezra B'Sereth, on Mondays, we have a number of people who wouldn't necessarily come for Shabbat, but when it comes for baking, there's a very, very active crew. So we could have different things that really attract different audiences, different frequency, different locations, different types of instruction. An annual lecture, so we could have a well-known Jewish or Sephardic scholar, personalities come to town. Sephardic concerts and plays, we would have resources to do that. I think would be very attractive. Family education programming, so things that involve family. Regular free Sephardic lunch. This is a big issue because the world has changed. Most young families are two-income families. There isn't a lot of time to prepare. When we do have Shabbat lunch, it's amazing, at least at Ezra B'Sereth, and I think the same at SBH, people are staying till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're socializing. And again, we'll get into how we're going to finance this in a few minutes. But we want to keep people together. Israel advocacy, I think Yael mentioned it. We do have very Zionistic congregations. We, as Sephardim in Seattle, connect very much to the state of Israel. We want to make sure we are prominent and front and center in that area. And we also have a lot of people, a lot of retirees. And we want to sponsor not only for retirees, but trips to Rhodes, Turkey, Spain, and Israel. Travel is a great way to bring people together. It's a lot of fun, and I think would be really well attended. And also how-to. So I think about something really simple like a Sephardic Passover Seder. How do you do a Passover Seder? Not everyone knows today, but we have some very, very beautiful Haggadot. I see Mr. Azels, he's published one a few years ago, I think second or third edition of that. And we could have instructions. How do you actually conduct a Sephardic Seder, as just one example. Youth programming. Again, I said this was probably the single highest priority and maybe one of the biggest drivers. When Simon was talking about connection of the second and third generation, we have a lot of room for improvement there. So a youth wing is kind of a third space place where kids can hang out. Teen programming, we really need to make sure it's inclusive, find a way to bring it and bring other people to the programs. Classes on Sephardic customs, food, and traditions. Young people, at least from my experience, love to bake. So let's bring them together and let's do that and have some opportunities to learn about our customs, our food, and our traditions. Summer high school and college internship programs. Opportunities in Israel, opportunities here in the United States. I think the idea of sending a delegation, like a youth delegation to APAC would be fabulous. Community service and learning. We want to give back to the community. We have participated in, for example, a group from our hopefully combined home, participating, let's say, in JFS food bank type programs. A lot of ways we can give back to the community. And I think we already have, thanks to Ethan Marcus, a Sephardic birthright trip. And it would be wonderful to have a huge delegation from Seattle attending that. Shabbat and holiday programming, I mean, that's why people mainly come to services, and we want to make sure that the programming there is enticing, whether you're really, really love tefillah or whether you're kind of indifferent about the tefillah. There's enough going where it really is attractive to come and to socialize with our community. This is key. It's membership, and this is a word that I think is really important today. People don't want to just be a member. I mean, people don't want to just pay dues, and the dues are expensive. We want people to belong. So we're thinking about tiered membership families, full members, cultural members, associate members, young family members, really creating an on-ramp where younger families can come in and join the synagogue. It's not cost prohibitive. Welcome process for new members. So how do we actually welcome in a new member in a more formal way? How do we match them with other families that kind of have similar interests, similar backgrounds? Really make it a welcoming experience. A recruitment strategy, and that's kind of where that rabbinic couple comes in, and a director. We want to go out and we want to recruit people. We need to go and meet them where they are, maybe run programs on the east side, run programs for young professionals. Membership appreciation events, make sure that our members know that they're valued. It's not just a matter of then sending out a statement and having them make monthly payments. We want them to understand that they're getting value and that the value they're getting exceeds what they're contributing. So that value equation has to be there. In terms of revenue, multi-year capital campaigns, so we'd want to match from the sale of assets. For example, if we sold $4 million worth of assets, then we'd want to have a $4 million capital campaign. And we think this might be around an $8 million aggregate type of project when you look at it. We could do dedication or rededication of spaces, building components and programs, the various types of membership packages, event fees from non-members, rental fees from the social hall and other spaces. So I was on the East Coast. They had a beautiful wedding center. It was rented out periodically, another source of revenue, dedicated catering contract, and annual fundraising efforts. So we think there could be multiple revenue streams. Again, we'd be a fairly large congregation, but getting together just to increase the size isn't enough given the age of our members. So hopefully all of our members make it to 120, but even if you look at that, we still need to not only combine to be larger, but we need to create a growth platform that's attractive to young families. So if we only are combining to just give ourselves a few more years, that's not the vision. The method of combining is to really create something that's attractive and will allow us to grow and compete for those new families. In terms of governance, new 501(c) corporation would be created. Board and committees comprise equal number of EB and SBH members, so we'd have equal representation on the new board. We would have a president that alternated for the first couple of years. Again, all these decisions would be up to the congregations as to whether to do this or not, and what the governance would look like. But this is the recommendations that we're putting forward. All assets would be combined and managed as one entity. Let me stop there. So Simon, we've heard, and we've also contemplated about some potential reasons not to do this. But here's just a few of them. Maybe we can go through these together. So
yeah, you bet. How about this one? We've been doing this for over 100 years.
That's true. We have been doing, but I don't think it's sustainable. When we look at the number of members that we have over 60 and over 80, those percentages just, I don't think, give us the next 100 years.
Can't we deal with our problems later on?
We always can. If we have a leaky roof, we could repair it today, we could repair it in the future. But what I would say is it's not a responsible position. As leaders, we need to be proactive, not reactive.
I like the way it is now.
So do I. I like the way it is now too. But my question to everyone would be, what of the above listed elements would it make it better? So I think we all like it the way it is now. We wouldn't be paying dues and joining if we didn't like the way it is now. But why wouldn't these enhancements make for a better overall experience? A few more potential objections.
What about the loss of identity, Norman?
So I think that's actually a fear that is very real. But what I would say is if we don't take a step like this, we will lose our identity because, as you said early on, how many people are coming in from Tekerdog and Rodis? There's just no more immigrants. There's not like this huge influx of Sephardim. So we really need to be very deliberate in making sure that even as we maintain our Sephardic tolerance and we maintain our Sephardic minhagim, we're making it very attractive to all Jewish families to come and join with us. So we want to make sure we create a hub that can attract new members. A couple more.
It feels pretty rushed.
Well, I don't think it's rushed. I mean, these conversations have been going on since 1927. What I would say is
I just like complaining, apparently. I have both sides, but yeah.
so Simon's give me a little more keshas, and we're going to talk a little bit about next steps, and I'll turn it back to Simon. But really, when we look at kind of the state of both facilities, at SBH, just to create a new social halls, over $3.5 million, and that doesn't touch the sanctuary. At Ezra B'Sereth, just given some of the structural problems we have across the entire property, we're looking at over $1 million. So both congregations today need standalone work well in excess of $1 million. This would seem to be a pretty opportune time to do it before each congregation independently goes out and tries to raise that type of capital.
We need to work out all the details first.
I think we learned over the last year plus that's not possible. I think that the real issue is we would need to create a new entity and work through the details together. So I loved Rabbi Sachs's model. For us, that was kind of, use a Hebrew word, that was a chidush. It was an insight that we're going to have a lot more belonging if, in fact, we do figure it out and build it together. And I really think what we need to stay focused on is, do we believe in the vision? Do we believe that we can get to a better place together? If we believe we can get to a better place together, I'm confident working together, we could work through all the details. There's a lot of smart, talented, committed people in our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, great. So last couple slides, our next steps. Number one, in April, we will be presenting to both congregational boards. And we will be asking them to move forward to present to the congregations for a yes or no vote to proceed with the creation of a new entity. The recommendation is that through July and December, should both congregations approve, that we create this new profit entity and governance structure, and that as of January 1, 2020, that we proceed forward as one new entity as we build together. Okay? So as of January 2020, that's the recommendation. At that point, there will be a new governance structure, as we detailed, that will facilitate the consolidation, that will make the decisions through engaging the community, creating a committee structure to make in-depth decisions about how things will move forward. The consolidation, again, we roughly assume will be a 3 to 5 year process. And this is, again, don't hold this to us. This is sort of a overall structure to give people an idea, because we've learned people like this idea of getting some guidance. But year one, governance structure, determining which location or that neither location works and that a new location would be better, launch a capital campaign, the facility design, community engagement. Year two, continue the capital campaign, permitting, interim prayer facilities will be utilized, facility design, staffing decisions will be made. Years 3 and 4, construction. Year 5, construction, move in. So we envision a new home together. It could look like either of these places. It could look like something
Actually, I think those
different.
are the same places. I think that's
oh, really?
Next year.
Look at that. Beautiful. Yeah, so look, we envision a new home together. There's a lot more work to be done, but this is an exciting time for our community. I think we all have the best interests of the community in mind. So we thank you for your patience in listening to us. At this point, we do have a few minutes to take any questions that are for clarifying any of what we've brought forward.
I think I wanted just to be, and there are a number of questions, and Simon and I will be here for a while. We'll answer some of those, and then at some point we'll go back to kind of a social, and we'll stay on to answer additional questions. I do want to frame that a little bit, that we'd really like to keep the questions. Our charter was to a recommendation, so we're not looking to get into a debate on the merits of this versus not doing this. We really think that's better handled at the congregational level. At the same time, we're not going to censor it, and we're just going to open it up for questions. But again, we would prefer that the questions be about the model and the vision, and that if there's debate, that's really better done within the respective congregations. That said, no questions off limits, so we'll pass it around. I see a question in the front row, so that's the easiest one for me to answer.
Okay. You can come down to one of the mics. Okay. My question is, in all the meetings that I've been to and the panel this evening, most of the people, or if not all of them, are from the 9811 area. And being that we're talking about the East Side and the whole Seattle community, I would like to hear from people who live outside the synagogue area what is it that they would like to have? Why do they belong, if all our members are 68% or whatever it is, live outside of our area? What are they getting from the synagogue, and what do they want to get from the synagogue?
So
So Simon, let me just pause for a minute. Just be curious. We will answer the question. Just to raise your hands, how many people here live outside of 98118? Oh, about 2/3 of the hands. Okay, great question. Go ahead.
So I'll say briefly, so you were at not all of the meetings. We did have a concerted meeting on the east side, and also the survey that we received, a good percentage were from outside of 98118. We do have cut data from responses from outside of 98118. I'm happy to provide it to you, but it's pretty lengthy. There wasn't massive difference between it, but I would say, I think what we saw among those who aren't necessarily observant, which is probably an easier, a lot of people have a deep connection to the culture. A lot of people want a greater level of participation in bat mitzvahs and for women and girls. I think that there's an enhancement that's necessary there. A lot of people want a greater level of youth engagement, but also are skeptical of that happening. So not radically different, but I'm happy to cut that data and share it with you if you'd like.
So I don't want to be a negative Nelly at all.
So don't be.
But I have to ask, if we start this process, let's say after January 1st, is there a way to back out? Do you have an escape plan if things don't work?
It's a question that we looked at, and we really wouldn't. I think that this has to be a very deliberate decision, well thought out, well debated by the congregations. When you think about two entities traditionally getting together, whether that's going back a few years ago to Compaq and HP, when two companies combine, they don't have kind of an escape clause. Typically when people get married, some cases they do, but generally they don't. So when we combine the assets and we create a new entity, there really wouldn't be a way to dissolve and go back to where we were. I want to be very candid about that, and that's one of the things the congregations should think very carefully about in deciding whether to proceed or not to proceed. Other questions?
Albert, if you can make your way down, that'd be even better.
I actually had
You're a young
a
man.
follow-up question to the first one, which I think is kind of related, or maybe it's a two-parter. But it was mentioned, do you have any data around people who are maybe affiliated with the community who are not members?
Yes.
What they're looking for? Like they were consulted in the
Yes.
surveys and everything?
Yes.
And do you have data around why there's such a big membership drop-off as you go through the generations?
We didn't ask why.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Why not?
Well, because it was already a pretty lengthy survey. So we didn't ask why your children aren't members. But some people added that in their, there were a couple opportunities at the end where people added that in. And so, there's a lack of engagement. There's a lack of relevance. Some people said, I didn't do a good enough job of making sure my kids were educated, engaged. I mean, there was a huge swath of sort of reasons why. And of course, there are lots and lots of studies about sort of why. But what we did find is, so there's a relative lack of connectivity to what the synagogues primarily offer. Right? So what we primarily offer is ritual. And for a lot of people, it's not relevant or it's not as engaging. And so when the diversification of opportunities isn't there and the relevance isn't there, then you're not there. So that's sort of, we can make assumptions from that, right? Yeah.
I think I heard a derivative question. I'm just going to expand that before we turn it to Albert, which is, do we have an opinion on that? And I think my opinion, so this is not data given, but right now both synagogues are very much in the prayer business, and that's part of, a major part of what a synagogue offers is the minyanim and the services that we offer. But we know that people can connect to a synagogue in many, many different ways. And so to the extent we don't offer all those other portals in terms of culture, food, travel, I think we limit the attractiveness of that synagogue to people whose number one priority may not be going to a prayer service in Hebrew.
I'd like to take a stab at that question and say that beyond the kind of near-term vision that would address that question, we have to look historically. We're not unique in that we're 100-year-old communities that were based in immigrations at the turn of the 20th century. There are many communities throughout the country that have experienced the exact same thing that we did, which is that demographically people move. People fled to the suburbs. People became less observant. And this is a phenomenon that's fairly typical throughout the country. So I think there's a kind of a micro answer to the question, which drills down to our specific community. But I think there's definitely a macro kind of answer to the question that really reflects a reality that many congregations locally and nationally have experienced. It's not an excuse, but it's a reality.
Albert Myman had a question. Albert?
Albert, before you jump in, the last thing I'll say, just to bring this home, is that maybe 2 weeks ago I had the opportunity to spend an hour with somebody that I grew up with at Sephardic camp, who grew up at Sephardic Bikur Cholim, whose family grew up at Sephardic Bikur Cholim, who now attends regularly Temple de Hirsch. And we had a conversation about, and as well as with her daughter, teenage daughter, about being Sephardic and why it's important. And she said, being Sephardic is highly important to me, but the primary entry point to Sephardic Bikur Cholim is prayer that I don't understand and can't relate to. But I always want to try to find a connection. So I think that's sort of the idea here, is if there are opportunities to diversify it, then that creates a greater opportunity for connection. All right, Albert, go ahead.
I have a very loud voice, so I'll try to speak
It's
quietly.
soothing. Loud and soothing.
Okay. First off, I want to give a Zaka Baruch to Norman, David, Simon, and the panelists and everyone involved. They did a great job tonight, made me feel very proud. But to my question, I truly feel like the name title Sephardic Unity Project has more potential than we even realize, whether our two synagogues merge or not. And I feel like if our synagogues do not end up merging, we can still do stuff together and make a difference and learn and grow as the project of the Seattle Sephardic Unity. And not only can we, I feel like we have to. So doing stuff as a Seattle Sephardic community together, if the synagogues do not merge at this point in time, what do you think that would look like?
So let me take a stab at that. I think, first of all, we do some things together already, and they're generally some of the best events we have. They're well attended, and I think it was Mary that mentioned that even not formal events, but just family celebrations where we go to one of the two synagogues and the community's there. It feels terrific when there's several hundred people in the room for a kiddush, all celebrating, hopefully a very happy event. So I do think that we could have more programming together throughout the year and create a very rich calendar of programming. And it was something that's a great question because it's something we looked at. But when you think about really creating the new entity and having the resources to build the youth type of programming, to build the cultural programming, we would really have to, so we could definitely do joint programs together, but to really create the type of experience that's in the vision, we would have to do more than that. So I'd say that would be a great, in my opinion, a great plan B, but I think the plan A would really be to create something beyond programming that really could reach the entire community. So great thoughts, and hopefully we won't have to go to plan B, but that's really up to the memberships.
Also, one last thing before I turn over the mic. I love talking in front of a big room, but
Well, come on down here then.
yeah, I'm good up here.
Okay.
But one last thing, I've also noticed tonight a lot of other communities across the country have been mentioned, like Los Angeles, New York, and South Africa even. And I feel like it'd be really powerful if we, as a Seattle Sephardic community, can like reach out to these places and do events together and learn from each other and bring them over here, or maybe even travel over there and have events like that. Could you see that as a possibility?
I think you should talk to Ethan Marcus about that, and I bet you he'll make that happen.
I will.
Okay.
Great. We'll take a couple of more questions. We don't want to cut anyone off, but I also know it's getting to 10 to 9. So anyone have a burning question they want to ask?
Who do I give this to? I don't want to hold the mic anymore.
Right here, give it to Eli Cohn. Okay, nice get questions from some of our younger members. This is terrific.
So as I've seen with especially a particular group of age around 20 years old, people who are in their 20s, some of them are off in school, whether it's away in college in New York, such. Some of them might be members or not members, and I think it would be really important for them to weigh in on this time and what such. So my question is, I think it would be really important, but how would there be a path to get their input?
Yeah,
I know you addressed.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's a great point. We made some progress in that way. I think we engaged a couple. We did actually engage a cohort of people in their 20s and early 30s and got some of their input.
Yep.
But I certainly think we could be doing a lot more. And certainly, if this passes, Eli, then I think that then it would behoove us to have a specific committee of people around your age that would help us with the implementation. I think that's right. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my worry is that some people who are not currently members, but their families are, they talk to their family and they want to return, or they're connected to the synagogue.
Yep. Yeah, we're going to rely on people like you to help us connect to those people, so that I don't know. I'm old. I don't know who anybody is anymore. So
let me just expand on that for a minute. You should be aware that as part of the data gathering, there was a very, very large contingent of SBH and EB, maybe not formally members, but certainly members connected to families that were engaged in this process from out of town. I think there was McKenna Owen actually created, and Jordan Behart created a forum to really go and capture their voices and understand. So their input, so it's a really insightful question, was taken into account. And we really should be engaging people who are connected, whether they live in Seattle or not, and really with the goal of helping them return to a vibrant community that can offer a lot, who knows, maybe even a cafe. Any other questions before we wrap up? I see one way up there. Eli, you want to help us out?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, this is more of a financial question. Just wondering if during the due diligence process, you guys consulted other synagogues that have attempted mergers or alliances, and I guess in terms of the financial feasibility of it, and what happens, in terms of if we do move forward, what that means for when we do get going, if it's truly is financially feasible to create this vision?
Yeah. So, well, we did look at a couple instances of failed mergers, right? And so that was important. But we also have been consulting with a few merger and acquisition experts and lawyers who have helped us at least come to the idea that it is feasible. But yeah, I think in the process of understanding of whether or not this thing will actually be feasible, where we work it out, it's one of the things that I think potentially could lead to this, a full stop. If we find out ultimately that financially this makes zero sense, on paper, it does make sense, but if there's something we don't know, right, then that's something that we'll learn, and clearly we're going to be we're going to be open and transparent about this, and if it doesn't make financial sense, then we won't do it. But right now, what we've learned is that, yes, we've got 2 assets. Much of those assets aren't being utilized. If we liquidate some of those assets, we'll have additional dollars. We'd be able to do something within those funds and be able to move forward. Right now, we believe that that's feasible, as well as legally. We might learn something otherwise if we move this forward. So,
I'll just expand on that, in that when we looked at this, it really, first of all, depends on the will of the people, that this is something that the substantial majority of people would want to do, and people would be willing to contribute to. But I think the other point I would make is building the house together, or doing this together, is really the operative structure. that when we looked at governance, it was kind of with these type of issues in mind, and that's why we said there would be equal representation, there would be an alternating presidency between the two congregations. At least from my perspective, when things don't work, it's because there's kind of there's more of a dominance, and what we're trying to do is create a equal footing where everyone could feel like they have a presence. And if we do this together with that kind, as opposed to one congregation absorbing another congregation, I don't think those models work very well. And that's one of the reasons we played the Rabbi Sachs video with something we'd want to do together and really go into with the spirit of cooperation and fairness from the very, very beginning.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, was there other questions? Or
We got one more. Yeah, right under the gun. We got one more, Wendy, and then we got to wrap it up.
Terrific.
Merged with Avat Ahim many, many years ago. So it's not unknown in this community that two congregations of Sephardic heritage merge.
Great point. Thank you very much.
for-
Other comments or anything? Otherwise, Simon and I and David will be here. It's now 2 minutes to 9, so we'll officially end 2 minutes early. And thank you all for
Thanks,
joining.
everybody, for coming.
Shalom lebene dodi,